Welcome to episode 3 of Staying in the House, powered by Gopherhole.com. I'm Daniel House, and after talking football for the past couple of days, basketball made news. And normally we're talking about March Madness right now, but with everything going on in the world, the headlines have shifted to players declaring for the NBA draft. Last week, it was Daniel Oturu. It's expected. He's going to be a lottery pick in the NBA draft, possibly for sure a first-round selection. It makes a ton of sense for him to declare. But in a surprising move, Marcus Carr announced on Instagram he is declaring for the NBA draft. Sophomore averaged 15 points, a 6.5 assists per game, finished second in the Big Ten in assist to turnover ratio, and ninth nationally in assists. He made such a huge impact on the Gophers this season. You see what he can do, creating his own shot, facilitating the offense. That dribble penetration really caused the defense to collapse and created looks on the perimeter for guys. Sometimes they didn't fall, but he was dominant during stretches of the season. You look at the big outburst of 35 points against Ohio State earlier in the year. Marcus Carr is super valuable, especially in tandem with Daniel Oturu. And I see a lot of fans are really worried that Marcus Carr cannot turn back now. There's no way he's back with the Gophers next season, but that's definitely not the case. The key distinction to make in this statement, he said he has not hired an agent. If he would have hired an agent, then there's no turning back. But since he did not do that, he has the opportunity to test the draft process, see what his value is, speak with people in the NBA, and then determine, hey, I don't want to pursue this. I'll come back to the University of Minnesota. And he has to make that decision by June 3rd, which is the NCAA early entrant deadline. Could change with all the COVID-19 stuff going on right now. The NBA draft is scheduled for June 25th, and that deadline is currently the 3rd for any NCAA early entrants. My guess is Carr probably stays next season unless something crazy happens with this draft process. Someone falls in love with him when they're looking at his film or speaking with them, and he gets great feedback, then I would say he will be returning next season. But I really wanted to show you the statement from Marcus Carr. Here it is, a little portion of it. The key words in this statement to me are, my intentions are to stay in the draft and pursue a professional career in the NBA. However, during this process, I will be retaining my college eligibility status by not signing with an agent. I am looking forward to receiving valuable information going through whatever process this unique draft year does include. So this basically tells you that Carr is pursuing the NBA opportunity, seeing and getting feedback, and then determining what he wants to do. I don't know if you guys remember, but last year there was a scare when Carr had transferred to Minnesota. He just finished sitting out the first year here, and there was a tweet that went out on his account that said he was declaring for the NBA draft. He deleted it, then he said it was a joke, but this time it's real. He's going to explore it, and he'll see what type of feedback he gets. I look at what this means for the Gophers moving into the future. Carr joining Daniel Oturu as a second player to declare. Oturu averaging 20 points, 11 rebounds per game. Carr averaging 15 points, 6.5 assists. They were causing this entire thing to tick all season long. These two, when they're on the floor together, everything changes. And I wanted to dive into that more. So I looked at the stats. And when each of them score 15 or more points in a game, the Gophers are 5-3 in Big Ten play. And when they each don't score 15 or more points per game, the Gophers are 3-10 this season. So when they were clicking, the entire offense was, and that makes sense because when you watch them play, you see the high ball screens, the pick and roll action that was really difficult for teams to defend because you got Carr attacking downhill occasionally. Then you've got Oturu after he sets a screen rolling to the basket and Carr delivering excellent passes all the time. And there was so much action off of that. You get into the perimeter, people get into the paint, people double down, and you're able to kick it out and get a good look on the perimeter. Kelsher and Willis didn't shoot as well as you'd like them to this year, especially Kelsher. But there were opportunities and looks created because of Carr's skills. And honestly, moving into next season, you were looking at Carr being that guy to be the leader of the team with Jamal Mashburn coming in. And then another addition, Martez Mitchell, who they're really excited about all of his length and the skills that he has and what he'll bring immediately. But if Carr doesn't come back, what does this roster look like? I was thinking about it last night. This team wouldn't probably win very many Big Ten games because you just see Brian Greenlee being the primary ball handler right now on the roster. Of course, Jamal Mashburn coming in, but he's going to have some learning to do, getting ready, adjusting to the next level. You ideally wanted to have Carr in here, so maybe you could play both of them together at the same time, and maybe not have to have Mashburn playing a ton of minutes right away. But again, we got to that point where watching the Gophers and seeing their roster development and what it looks like from a construction standpoint. It's one of the things that hasn't been able to click during the Pitino era is establishing a team that has depth consistently. Last year, the bench still wasn't clicking where it should be. He wasn't able to use a lot of different guys. The minutes started to accumulate, and I wondered how much of that contributed to Marcus Carr's decision. You look at him playing 36 and a half minutes per game, barely sitting down. Is he going, okay, man, I don't know if I can go through the wear and tear of this again. I want to see the value. I think it's more of I want to see the value, see where I'm at right now. But I deep down wonder about him thinking, man, going through another year playing all of those minutes, everything accumulating up. I can't believe it. No other Big Ten player had more minutes per game than Carr. He had the fourth most minutes per game average among Power 5 players. Marcus Carr was playing way too many minutes last year, and you could see it late in games. I look at the Purdue game. He was absolutely exhausted. It goes into overtime, and he has that big turnover at the end. They almost had the game secured, and you wonder if they would have won that game, how it would have changed the rest of the season. Maybe one more win, does it make a difference? Obviously, it really didn't matter much with everything that happened and no NCAA tournament, but still, Carr played a whole bunch of minutes, and he just looked exhausted. And when I compare it to early in the season, and I thought about this the other day, look at how the Gophers started the season. Now, of course, they had a lot of new faces coming in, like 7 new guys trying to play together, getting used to it. Jordan Murphy graduates, Amir Coffey goes pro. So there's a lot of uncertainty at the beginning, but I felt like in the middle of the year, they started to get it grooving. They were going again, picked up a nice win against Michigan, picked up a nice win against Penn State, played Ohio State, who was ranked near the top in the top 5 at the time, beat them at home convincingly, all within that stretch in the middle of the year to start of the year, right in the Big Ten slate. That's where you started to see the Gophers really start to get into a groove. But then when they needed to start winning games like at Penn State, the home game against Iowa stands out, the home game against Indiana, all real close games. And some of that is related to not being able to close out those ball games, not having that ability to just hold on and take control of leads. The Maryland game is another example. They had control of that the whole way. I felt like they should have won that game too. All these games that were decided by a couple points really made a difference and defined the season. And I firmly believe as the season progressed that Carr and Oturu were starting to wear down. You could see when they played games coming off rest, like the Northwestern game, I believe, was one example where they had time to recover. They were able to get more rest, and the minutes just weren't an obstacle maybe as much as they were earlier in the year, where maybe they were playing more games at once. And even during that stretch, I thought it would be better because they didn't play that much ball in the month of February. They were all spread out more than when in January they were playing a ton of basketball. They were traveling a lot. So it just, there's a lot of different factors at play, but one of the things that I keep coming back to is Marcus Carr had to be exhausted at a lot of points in last season. And now with everything going on with the COVID-19 and all the things that are uncertain, Carr's going to explore it. What does he have to lose at this point? He's got extra time to really study it up, see what he wants to do, and then determine if he's coming back next season. Now, when I look at options. Moving forward here, what does the Gophers roster look like? I've said it before, got to start developing some depth that can last. And I know some people declared for the NBA draft and some unique circumstances there, but you got to be able to start building the program to the point where you're able to withstand a couple losses. You have guys that can come in and take a few minutes per game. I thought Isaiah Enan showed a lot of promise, and he's an example of someone that started to receive more minutes in the back half of the year and was a contributor. Trey Williams showed flashes, but now they just got to keep continuing to try to get some of these guys that can play roles coming off the bench, even if it's just eating a couple minutes to get these guys some rest. How do they withstand this? Let's say Marcus Carr decides to go pro. What do? Well, Jamal Mashburn coming in playing the guard position. He will be asked to be thrust in a huge role, stepping up. I've heard from a lot of people who've watched Jamal Mashburn play. They think he's legit. He'll be a guy that comes in and makes a big mark. I've heard many people say that he could be one of the surprise young players in the Big Ten. Not only that, but you have to hit the transfer market hard to improve the roster. And there's one name I would keep a close eye on, Morris Udeze, a transfer from Wichita State. There's a mutual connection with the Gophers. Kyle Lindstedt, one of the assistants, has worked with Udeze in the past. He recruited him. He's a big man with a 7-foot wingspan, 6'8", 240. Really strong rebounder. I heard he's very dynamic around the rim. He averaged 4 points and 3 rebounds per game last season. If the Gophers really want to improve their roster, they got to find some more front court talent. With Oturu leaving, Udeze could be a guy that slides into a big role for the Gophers. And that's something that they can sell in the recruiting process, is that there's a lot of minutes to go around. All these transfers that the Gophers speak with, they are going to be of the mindset that they can come in and play immediately and have a primary role. So that's something to watch moving forward, is how Minnesota navigates the transfer market. They have been reaching out to a ton of guys at a lot of different positions. So monitoring the transfer market over the next couple of weeks will be fascinating, and it'll help answer some of the questions that we have about the Gophers roster moving forward into next season. The Gophers have to find ways to patch the roster and come up with a method to how does this program shift its mentality from being a team that can't withstand a couple losses to being a program that is built to last. It has people who are developing behind the scenes quickly, getting minutes, and then slowly easing into bigger roles as time progresses. That's tough to do. It's not like a college football roster. I get it. You don't have a lot of resources. You don't have a huge roster where you can invest in a lot of different guys. So you have to really do a good job of narrowing in, picking the right players, knowing how long it's going to take to develop them, and then elevating. And that's easier said than done. So the Gophers have to try to figure out what they're going to do in the event Carr leaves, which I'd say is very unlikely. But we know Daniel Oturu, with him being a lottery pick, potential first-round selection, he's probably hitting the road almost essentially, going to be heading to the NBA. And he'll be the first high NBA pick for the Gophers since 2004, Chris Humphreys. Big accomplishment for him. Look at what he did for the Gophers program, staying home, providing just one of the best seasons that we're going to see in a long time from a big man. So efficient off the dribble, one of the most dynamic players when he's on the low block. I just enjoyed watching him play, and I know that an NBA team is going to get real lucky because they're going to have a player that hasn't really even peaked to his full potential yet. There were scouts there at a lot of games this year, probably more than there's been in a long time. A lot were coming in to see Murph, but just as many coming in to watch Oturu this past season. So best of luck to Dan. He has a bright future ahead. All the stuff that he did academically, it looks like he's pretty close to finishing his degree, so he'll be able to hopefully get that done eventually, but he cannot pass up the opportunity to go pro. It's just like Amir Coffey. I think Dan probably has even more upside because he's going to be a higher pick, and it's a better decision for him. But Amir is benefiting and developing in the LA Clippers system. I thought he played well in a couple games that I watched last season with Doc Rivers, and he really did some nice things down in the G League. Finally, I wanted to make sure that I touched on a couple of the latest coaching moves with the Gophers. Rob Jeter. I really liked Rob Jeter. I met him a couple times He just has this ability to really create relationships, and he was big for the Gophers recruiting efforts. Guy that had this whole Midwest region experience from his time at Milwaukee and Wisconsin. Now he's taking the Western Illinois job. He's going to have his hands full. From what I've been able to gather, the Western Illinois job is not attractive, and he's going to have a big project to try to get that program back on track. But Jeter's leaving the Gophers as an assistant. And not only that, but keep an eye on Ed Conroy. Doogie tweeted something out, Darren Wolfson on Twitter. He was talking about Ed Conroy potentially leaving and being a candidate for the Samford job as a head coach. So Gophers could be without two assistants heading into next season. And what does Pitino do with those spots? Who does he hire? What's his approach? Does he look at a guy, like I said, with this whole idea that you need to try to figure out how to develop a better roster system to retain and develop talent and build a roster that you feel like can withstand players leaving or just needing minutes to not have to play guys as much during games, just to give 3 or 4 minute breaks here or there. Maybe you hire an assistant that has a pedigree in identifying and developing those types of players to add something to your staff. I don't know, but the Gophers, if they do lose 2 assistants, it adds another element to a season where you're already have Daniel Oturu declaring for the NBA draft. You have uncertainty surrounding what Marcus Carr is going to do. He'll most likely be back, but we don't know. There are so many question marks with Gopher basketball right now. We'll have more answers soon, as the Gophers are really reaching out to a lot of guys on the transfer market right now. They are trying to find guys that can contribute immediately, make an impact. But with the current uncertainty with the team, there's a lot to offer to a potential transfer. There's minutes to go around. If you hire an assistant, he might have a relationship with someone that it could bring with in terms of a player or transfer. There's so many questions that will be answered over the course of the next month and a half, where we're going to start seeing some movement. Pitino maybe makes a hire. There's a lot of time to sit around in Zoom conferences and talk with coaches and interview them at this point, because we're all just in our houses waiting for this COVID-19 to pass. So we'll see what Pitino does. But right now, I wanted to make sure everyone understood that Marcus Carr intends to pursue the NBA, but he's going to test the market. He hasn't hired an agent. So there's a chance that he decides to withdraw. I would say 85, 90%, maybe even more, that Carr ends up back here with the Gophers next season, and the Gophers are able to build upon some of the things that they did last year and utilize Carr, who could improve his draft stock even more, I believe, next season by being a primary guy and a leader of the team, a young squad with some guys that are going to be coming in like Jamal Mashburn. He could have a really big impact and leave a mark on him and play complementary together potentially. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Gopher basketball, we're a long ways away. I wish we had March Madness right now, but I wanted to talk a little Gopher basketball, keep you guys entertained. Please be sure to go out on YouTube, on Gopher Hole, on our account, and make sure to give us a like and subscribe. It's completely free to do. It's right here for you to see at Gopher Hole. Go on right now, subscribe. It helps us out. If you can do that, that would be great. Also, you can follow content on Twitter at Gopher Hole. Gopherhole.com has articles, content. You can go on the forums, get an account, talk with passionate Gopher fans, and share ideas. And then you can check out my stuff, everything. Gopher football, Gopher basketball, Vikings content, the draft's coming up. If you want to see content, follow me on Twitter at Daniel House NFL for the latest Gophers, Vikings, Minnesota sports in general ideas. They're all on my Twitter account. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on the next episode.